If I had known what that dinner was really about, I'd have worn armor instead of a button-down. Ashley wants to talk, my friend Kevin had said over the phone, voice neutral like he was reading a grocery list, not setting me up for emotional demolition. Over dinner. At Embers. 7 o'clock. I should have known better. Embers was her favorite place, not mine. Too fancy. Too curated. It was the kind of restaurant where the lighting is moody, the food is minimal, and the wine list comes with more zeros than the average mortgage. Still, I showed up. Clean-shaven, confused, and just a little hopeful. That's the worst part. Hope. The slow killer. Because you never expect the ambush until you're the one bleeding optimism all over the floor. Ashley was already seated. Of course she was. Looking like she hadn't lost a single minute of sleep while I'd spent the last 2 weeks trying to remember how to eat without checking her texts. She smiled when she saw me. Not the kind that reaches your eyes. No, this one was polite. Corporate. The smile of someone about to hand you your termination notice. Across from her sat a man I didn't know. A guy with a jawline that could cut drywall and a tan that screamed year-round yacht life. He gave me a small nod as I approached the table. Ashley gestured casually. Logan, this is Trevor. Trevor. Of course his name was Trevor. I shook his hand out of reflex. His grip was firm. Confident. The kind of handshake you offer when you already think you've won. I sat down, ignoring the blood hammering in my temples. Ashley spoke first. We didn't want to do this over the phone. I blinked. We? Trevor leaned in slightly. Look, man, I'm not here to fight. Just to be honest. I nodded slowly. Great. Honesty's good. Let's all be honest. Ashley glanced down at her menu like the wine list might soften the blow. I've been seeing Trevor for about 6 months. There it was. No build-up. No excuses. Just 6 months of betrayal, served medium rare with a side of audacity. I didn't say anything. Just reached for my water glass and took a sip like I was reading a weather report. Trevor cleared his throat. We didn't mean for it to happen this way. But it did. Didn't mean? I asked, voice level. Was it an accidental 6-month detour? You tripped and fell into my wife's inbox. Ashley flinched, but Trevor gave a half-smile, like he'd been preparing for this moment in the mirror all week. We just want to be respectful. I laughed. Short, dry, incredulous. Respectful? You're sleeping with my wife, Trevor. You parked your ethics at the valet. Ashley's eyes hardened. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I turned to her. You invited me here to announce the affair. In a restaurant. With him sitting across the table. You think I'm making this harder? She sighed. I just thought you deserved to know. Oh, I knew. I just didn't realize you'd book a table for 3 to deliver the punchline. But fine. They'd made their move. What they didn't know was, I'd already started making mine. I didn't flip the table. I didn't throw a glass. I didn't even call Trevor the walking jar of hair product that he was. Nope. I just sat there with a faint smile and let them think they'd taken something from me. But what they didn't know, what neither of them could have possibly imagined, was that I had already started assembling my own response. See, about a month earlier, I'd noticed the signs. The work trips that somehow required makeup and high heels. The phone she never used to lock that suddenly had more passwords than a CIA database. And the worst sign? That weird gut feeling. The one no man wants, but every man knows is right. So I hired a guy named Harris. Quiet. Professional. Not the trench coat and fedora type. More the Starbucks Latina cannon with zoom lens variety. I didn't even need to tell him much. Just her schedule, a few suspicious locations, and a green light. 3 weeks later, he handed me a red folder. It was heavy. Inside were photos. Ashley with Trevor outside a hotel in Midtown. Ashley in Trevor's car, hand on his neck. Ashley at a resort I'd never been to, wearing a swimsuit I'd never seen, sipping drinks that I'd apparently never paid for, but definitely did. There were timestamps, credit card receipts, audio transcripts from phone calls she thought were private. Harris had been thorough, and I had waited. I'd waited for her to confess, to come clean. I even hoped she'd decide not to. Maybe she'd come back on her own. Maybe we'd rebuild. Instead, she invited me to dinner with the man who took my place and asked me to smile through it. I stood up from the table that night without touching my food. Ashley looked up. Where are you going? Home, I said. To file some paperwork. She rolled her eyes. Oh, come on, Logan. I leaned in just enough so she could hear me over the clink of glasses and violin cover of Coldplay in the background. You just set the stage. I'm about to drop the curtain. Trevor blinked. What does that mean? It means, I said calmly, you're about to find out how much a smile can cost. And with that, I walked out. The red folder was waiting in my glove compartment. The next morning, I was in a leather chair that probably cost more than my first car, staring across a mahogany desk at a man named Elliot Crane. Elliot had that sharky, quiet confidence that made you believe he could win a court case using only a napkin and a smirk. His tie was perfect. His watch gleamed. His handshake felt like a contract. I dropped the red folder on his desk with a soft thud. He raised an eyebrow. This what I think it is? You tell me, I said, crossing my arms. He opened it, flipped through the pages with the expression of a man reading someone else's overdue obituary. Photo after photo. Timestamp after timestamp. The whole gallery of betrayal laid out like an art exhibit titled, "Loyalty is Overrated." When he looked back up, his smile was slow. "Mr. Graham, how soon do you want to dismantle her world?" I didn't smile. I wasn't there to gloat. I was there to plan. She's got a trust from her father, I said. We bought the house under my name. I paid off the car. She has a financial advisor, but I've got records. I want to keep what's mine and let her explain to Trevor why her lifestyle just got demoted to economy class. Elliot leaned back, folding his fingers. We can work with that, especially with proof. A court's going to love this. I don't want court. I want precision. Quiet. Clean. By the time she figures it out, I want to be gone and the lock's changed. He gave a satisfied nod. You've come to the right man. Before I left, I slid another folder across the table. What's this? He asked. Trevor, I said. He's a financial advisor. Very public. Very polished. I want a background check. I want every skeleton, every red flag, every unpaid parking ticket. Elliot chuckled. You're not just playing defense. I stood. Elliot, I'm not playing at all. I walked out of that office lighter than I had in months. Because you know what's better than revenge? Leverage. A man like Trevor doesn't expect to lose. That's what makes him dangerous. But it's also what makes him sloppy. You see, confidence is a great mask until it turns into arrogance. Then it stops hiding your flaws and starts highlighting them. 3 days after I met with Elliot, his assistant emailed me a PDF file labeled simply, Trevor Langley, Preliminary Report. I read it twice, then a third time, and I smiled. Trevor was slick, no question. Ivy League degree, high-end financial firm, multiple magazine interviews with headlines like The Money Whisperer and Your Portfolio's Best Friend. His website was all beach photos, tailored suits, and motivational quotes that could pass for dating app bios. Everything about him screamed stability, charisma, success. But Elliot's report? That was the reality check. Turns out, Trevor's success was built on more duct tape than cement. He'd been under quiet investigation for client inconsistencies. Translation: he was skimming. Not a lot. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to avoid detection by regulators, but enough to ruin him if it ever hit the headlines. His biggest account? A high-profile celebrity divorcee with a temper and 3 lawyers on speed dial. She had no clue that her retirement fund was doing more backflips than a gymnast on Red Bull. If someone were to find out. Oh, and here's the kicker. Trevor had used Ashley's name on one of his personal business loans. A small one, probably meant to fly under the radar. But it tied her to his finances. If he went down, she'd at least get dragged through the mud with him. Poetic, really. I leaned back in my chair, sipping coffee that suddenly tasted sweeter. Not because I was watching them suffer, but because I now had the match and the gasoline. And all they'd given me was the fire. The next move? Simple. I waited until Friday. Friday was the day Trevor hosted his Legacy Brunch, a monthly networking gig he ran at his firm's downtown office. Lots of glass, handshakes, and people pretending to care about each other's golf handicap. I showed up in a charcoal suit, no tie, wearing the calm smile of a man who already knows the ending to the movie. The receptionist greeted me like I belonged. I dropped Elliot's edited dossier, cleaned up, formatted like an anonymous tip, into the donation box near the espresso bar. Slipped it right between a copy of Forbes and a flyer for some hedge fund gala. And then I left. I wasn't there to witness the collapse. I just wanted to pull the first card and let the house fall on its own. By Monday morning, the tremors began. Ashley called. 3 missed calls before I picked up. Logan, she said, voice tight, have you heard anything about Trevor? I played dumb, which, to be fair, isn't hard when the person you're talking to thinks you're still licking your wounds. No. Why? She hesitated. Some stuff's coming out about his firm. Rumors. There was a leak or something. Oh, I said. That's wild. Another pause. You didn't do anything, did you? I gave a low chuckle. Ashley, I'm not you. I don't stab people and ask if they're okay afterward. She didn't respond. I could hear the static hum of her panic over the line. I let her twist for a moment longer, then added, if Trevor's not who you thought he was, maybe you should have done your due diligence before handing him the keys to your reputation. And I hung up. That night, Elliot called. You'll want to hear this, he said, voice practically humming. Trevor's being temporarily suspended pending internal review. His firm wants distance. They found financial discrepancies tied to 2 clients. Let me guess, I said, stretching back in my chair. Anonymous tip? Elliot didn't answer, which was his way of winking through the phone. Also, he added, Ashley's name came up. Nothing prosecutable yet, but the firm knows she co-signed a business loan. They're not happy. It's all still under the radar, but it won't be for long. Nope. He paused. Logan, if I may say, this is the cleanest, most surgical vengeance I've ever seen. No lawsuits. No tantrums. Just quiet demolition. Thanks, I said. But I'm not done. Because here's the thing. Taking Trevor down wasn't revenge. It was cleanup. The real reckoning? That was still coming. And it wasn't going to be about legalese or passive-aggressive dinner invitations. It was going to be personal. Because Ashley had taken something from me that wasn't just a marriage. She'd taken time. My loyalty. My silence. My trust. And I was done playing the good guy who turned the other cheek while someone else scribbled graffiti on everything I'd built. She wanted excitement. A thrill. A man who made her feel alive. I was going to show her what real consequences feel like. Not by yelling. Not by hurting. By walking away and making her watch everything she bet on collapse. 2 weeks passed. Not a word from Ashley. Which was strange, considering that woman used to send me grocery lists in 3 parts and text me photos of throw pillows like they were classified blueprints. But now? Silence. Then, one morning, just as I was stepping out of the gym, my phone buzzed. Not a call. A bank alert. Joint checking account. Withdrawal denied. Attempted amount. $3,000. I smiled like someone who just heard their least favorite band broke up. Because I'd been waiting for this. Let me rewind a little. While Elliot was handling the legal framework, I've been handling the optics. See, one of the things Ashley used to brag about was how connected she was. Her network. Her brunch friends. The social circle that came with bottomless mimosas and top-tier gossip. So I fed that circle something they couldn't resist, a rumor. I didn't even have to lie. Just redirect. I made sure a few choice people accidentally overheard a conversation at our old favorite wine bar. Oh, you didn't hear? Ashley's new guy? Yeah, apparently the SEC's sniffing around. Poor thing didn't know she was signing up for a scandal. By the end of the week, she wasn't getting brunch invites anymore. She was the brunch. And while her social life deflated like a poorly tied balloon, the rest of my plan unfolded just as quietly. First, I froze the joint accounts. Not out of spite, just practicality. Ashley had already chosen her team. She didn't get to use my resources to fund her next chapter. Second, I moved out. Left the house, the furniture, even the espresso machine she loved more than conversation. But not before I took a video walkthrough, time-stamped, narrated, and neatly backed up. And lastly, I changed the will. Not because I was dying, but because someone needed to be reminded that being replaced in a marriage doesn't mean you vanish from the game. Sometimes it means you start playing to win. So when the bank alert came in, I knew exactly what it meant. She was scrambling. Later that day, the phone call came. Blocked number. Classic. I answered anyway. Logan, she said, like the name still tasted familiar. We need to talk. I thought we did. I replied. Back at Embers. Lovely risotto. Bad company. Can you stop being so? She paused. So cold. That caught me off guard. Ashley wasn't one to flinch. If she'd had a spirit animal, it would have been an ice sculpture. I waited. She continued. I can't access the accounts. I know, I said. She inhaled sharply, like someone trying to stay composed while sitting on a thumbtack. Trevor's under audit, she said after a pause. His firm froze his assets. I've got bills, Logan. And I've got boundaries, I said calmly. It's wild how life works out. She tried a new angle. We were married for 11 years. Doesn't that mean something? Yeah, I said. It means I know exactly how long you can fake loyalty while planning an exit strategy. Silence. Then came the flicker of the old Ashley, the one who could cut you with a syllable. You're enjoying this. I leaned against the kitchen counter, watching coffee brew. No, I said. I'm not. But I am at peace. Which is something I didn't feel once in the last year with you. She didn't respond. Just breathed. I could picture her pacing, arms crossed, jaw tight. The kind of body language that used to make me cave just to stop the tension. But not anymore. She finally said, "What do you want?" It wasn't a threat. It wasn't flotation. It was desperation, dressed up like diplomacy. I paused, savoring the shift. "I want nothing," I said. Which, funny enough, is exactly what you left me with. Then I hung up. She texted once, something about being confused and hurt. I didn't reply. Because if you stand in a collapsing building long enough, you don't deserve a ladder. You deserve a front row seat to your own consequences. Later that week, I got an email from Elliot. Divorce papers served. Financial split, clean and ruthless. No alimony. No mess. Attached was a note. She signed without negotiation. Looks like she's in retreat mode. I stared at the signature line. Ashley Graham. And for the first time in years, that name meant absolutely nothing to me. I clicked archive. Then I opened a blank document. The title? New chapter. Rules I don't compromise on. There's this myth people believe that when your world falls apart, you've got to rebuild it exactly the way it was. I never subscribed to that. Not even before Ashley flipped our marriage like a Monopoly board. After everything, I didn't want the old version of my life back. I wanted a new model. Something quieter, cleaner. Mine. So I started with the simple things. First, I changed the locks on the house I'd left behind, not because Ashley ever tried to come back, but because the symbolic weight of it felt like closure. Click. Done. No ghosts. Next, I sold the furniture. All of it. The couch where she used to fake her smiles during Netflix nights. The bed she used to sleep in after texting Trevor under the covers. Gone. Posted on Facebook Marketplace like any other relic of a bad decision. And I didn't replace it with new versions of the same. I bought a leather chair with a high back and no memory of anyone else. I got a minimalist desk. Clean lines. Sharp corners. Something that said, "This space is mine now." I wasn't trying to build a man cave. I was reclaiming territory. Then came the habits. And this part changed everything. I used to wake up at 7:30. Now I was up at 5 a.m., no alarm needed. Cold shower. Strong coffee. A run before sunrise, while the city still slept off its lies. At first, the mornings felt empty. Like I was just killing time before the grief kicked in. But after a few weeks, something shifted. That silence I'd once feared? It became my sanctuary. There were no passive-aggressive sighs. No side eyes across the breakfast table. No pretending. Just breath. Sweat. Progress. I started journaling. Not poetry. Not ramblings. Just facts. Every night, I wrote down 3 wins. Sometimes it was as simple as didn't text her back. Other times, it was got through an entire day without thinking about what she was doing or who she was doing it with. That counts. Everything counts when you're clawing your way back to yourself. I picked up boxing again. Not to hit anything. Not yet. Just shadowboxing. It reminded me that my body wasn't built just for carrying emotional weight. It was built to move. To fight. To breathe. Funny thing is, when you focus on yourself without the noise, you start to notice what you actually want, not what you tolerated, or compromised for, or convinced yourself was enough. I wanted peace. I wanted control. I wanted a life where I never again had to ask for permission to feel valued. Around this time, Kevin, my oldest friend, the same guy who once awkwardly sat across from me at the betrayal dinner, called to check in. "You good?" he asked. I smiled into the receiver. "Better. Better like you've moved on, or better like you're plotting world domination?" "Both," I said. He laughed. "Well, if you ever need help running for office or building an underground lair, I've got blueprints." That call turned into dinner. Dinner turned into reconnecting with people I hadn't really seen in years, friends I'd slowly drifted from while spending every ounce of my attention trying to hold a one-sided marriage together. You don't realize how isolating betrayal is until you start talking again and people say things like, "Man, I wanted to say something for years, but I didn't know how." Or, "She always made it seem like you were the problem." That one stung, but it was honest. And I needed honest more than I needed comfort. Because when you finally wipe the fog off the mirror, you want to know what's real, not what's flattering. One night, I found myself back at the lake where I used to take Ashley when we first dated. That place had been our escape, before it became just another location on the marriage highlight reel we stopped updating. But this time, I didn't go there to remember her. I went there to remember me. I sat on the hood of my car, watching the water ripple under the moonlight, and I let the wind carry away everything I no longer needed, like some unspoken audit of the soul. The lies. The guilt that wasn't mine. The illusion that I needed closure from someone who barely knew how to tell the truth to herself, let alone to me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel angry. I felt empty. In the good way. The way a house feels when it's finally been cleared of clutter. You walk through the rooms, echo bouncing off the walls, and instead of sadness, you feel potential. Ashley used to say I didn't express my emotions enough. What she didn't realize is I was just storing them for when I'd need them most. And now? Now I was using them to build something better. Not louder. Not flashier. Just stronger. It started with a voicemail. I saw the name before I heard the message. Lindsay Carrington. Ashley's best friend. Her ride or die. Maid of honor. Co-conspirator, though she'd always worn her innocence like a designer scarf. Light, stylish, and probably fake. I hadn't spoken to Lindsay since the night Ashley handed me my dignity across a candlelit table and a side of roasted asparagus. But here she was, popping up on my phone like a ghost with a social calendar. Logan, hey, her voice was smoother than I remembered, less chipper, more cautious. I know this is unexpected. I heard about everything. From Ashley. And some others. And I just wanted to reach out. Maybe we could talk. That was it. No context. No apology. Just a verbal breadcrumb trail leading back to the very forest I'd burned to the ground. I didn't respond. The next day, she texted. I understand if you don't want to talk to me. But it's not what you think. Trevor hurt her too. She's not doing well. I stared at the message for a long time. Not doing well. That phrase used to trigger the part of me trained to comfort, to fix. But now? Now it just made me reach for another sip of coffee and keep scrolling. 2 days later, Lindsay doubled down. Can we meet? Just once? You should know what's going on before it hits the news. That got my attention. I agreed to meet her at a small cafe, one of those modern minimalist spots with overpriced espresso and furniture that looked like it had trust issues. I arrived early, chose the corner seat, and waited. Lindsay walked in 5 minutes late, sunglasses too big, tension too visible. She spotted me, gave a polite wave, and slid into the chair across from mine. You look good, she said. I didn't respond. She sighed. Okay. Straight to it. Trevor's being sued. I leaned back, watching her. By who? 3 former clients. Allegations of fraud. Mismanagement. One of them's pretty high profile. The kind of person who sues you and then tells the media before you can say non-disclosure. I nodded slowly. And Ashley. She's been subpoenaed. Her name's on one of the LLCs. She says she didn't know. Claims she signed stuff without reading it, just trusting him. I raised an eyebrow. She trusted him? Lindsay winced. Yeah, that call. I sipped my coffee. So why am I here, Lindsay? She hesitated. Because she's spiraling. And because I think she regrets how things ended with you. I gave a short laugh. Does she regret what she did, or just that it didn't pay off? Lindsay didn't answer right away. Both, maybe. I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't here for closure. She wasn't even here to pass on a message. Lindsay had that look, the same one she used to have in college when she wanted something and thought charm could write the check. You're here to ask me for something, I said. She blinked. No, spare me. You said I needed to know before it hits the news. That's a favor, not a courtesy. What's the ask? She shifted in her seat. Ashley's lawyer thinks if she can prove she's been financially responsible during the last 2 years, which she hasn't, it might mitigate some of the fallout. You have records. You were always the organized one. I shook my head. No. Lindsay's face fell. Logan. No, I repeated. Ashley wanted out. She walked. And she didn't just leave me, she chose someone else. Now that someone else is poison, and she wants a do-over. She's scared. So was I said. But I didn't burn the house down to feel better. Lindsay tried again. She's not asking for much. Just a statement. Something that says she was a good partner. She wasn't. A beat passed. She was selfish, disloyal, and dishonest, I continued. And if she's facing consequences now, that's between her and the mirror. Silence stretched between us. Finally, Lindsay nodded. You're not the same guy. No, I said. I'm not. And I wasn't. I used to be the fixer. The man who solved everyone else's problems with duct tape and decency. The man who let loyalty become a leash. But not anymore. I stood up, grabbed my jacket. I wish her luck, I said. I hope she learns something from all this. But if she wants grace, she's got to find it somewhere else. Lindsay stayed seated, her mouth tight, her eyes flickering with something like understanding, or maybe disappointment. I left the cafe without looking back. In the parking lot, my phone buzzed again. A different number. No voicemail. I ignored it. That was the thing about healing. Once it starts, everything that tries to drag you back becomes easier to say no to. I didn't know Ashley my rescue. I owed myself my peace. A week after the cafe meeting, I got a call from a name I hadn't seen in a while. Martin Langley. Trevor's older brother. Corporate lawyer. Expensive suits. A man who used your first name like it was a negotiating tactic. He invited me to lunch. Neutral territory. Said he had an arrangement to propose. I was curious. Not invested. Just curious. So I went. We sat across from each other at a downtown steakhouse so upscale they didn't have menus, just servers who described your options like bedtime stories. Martin didn't waste time. Trevor's reputation is bleeding out, he said over a filet mignon. Ashley's attached to it, and it's going to get messy. She's scared, obviously. I nodded slowly. Of course. She wants to settle her name quietly. He wants to do the same. Which brings me to you. I leaned forward. Go on. You have documents. Proof she had no involvement in certain accounts. She never accessed the investment tools. No signatures except the one he pressured her into. If that narrative becomes official, the court treats her as a pawn, not a partner. I sipped my water. So you want me to clear her name? Just the financial part. And what's in it for me? Martin didn't blink. $150,000. Immediate transfer. I set my fork down. Looked him in the eye. You think I'd take money to clean up your brother's disaster? That I'd use my credibility to sanitize their betrayal? Martin hesitated. Logan, everyone has a price. That's not an insult. It's math. No, I said. It's cowardice in a suit. He opened his mouth. I stood. Tossed my napkin on the plate. I'm not clearing Ashley's name. But I'll tell you this. If Trevor drags her down with him, it's not because I pushed. It's because she jumped. And I walked out, not even bothering to validate my parking ticket. The news broke 3 days later. Langley investigated for financial fraud. Clients allege embezzlement. Ashley's name was in the third paragraph. Not accused yet, but listed as a co-signatory on one of the disputed LLCs. It didn't matter what role she played. The court of public opinion doesn't care about nuance. Only headlines. Lindsay called. Twice. I didn't answer. I heard from Kevin later that Ashley had been fired from her consulting gig. Apparently her employer didn't want bad optics. Her social media went dark. The brunch circle turned cold. Trevor? He vanished, radio silent. Probably in some lawyer's office, signing over his sports car in exchange for a shot at leniency. I thought I'd feel triumphant. But I didn't. I felt free. Because I realized I no longer cared about their downfall. I cared about my rise. I signed a lease for a new office space downtown. Lean. Bright. Mine. A place to rebuild my consulting business without having to navigate around someone else's insecurities. Clients came back. Money stabilized. Peace became the new luxury, and I was rich in it. And one night, sitting in my new place, a whiskey in one hand and silence in the other, I thought about all of it. The lies, the betrayal, the grief. And I smiled. Because not every story ends with a punchline. Some end with a man standing taller than he's ever stood, because he stopped trying to save people who were never drowning, just swimming in the opposite direction. 3 months later, I got one last thing from Ashley. A letter. Handwritten. No return address. It wasn't long. Logan, you were right. About everything. Trevor's gone. The money's gone. The career I loved gone. And the part that hurts the most? The way I see myself now. I don't expect you to forgive me. I wouldn't if I were you. But I want you to know that you were never the problem. I was. I ran toward chaos because I mistook it for passion. And I left the one man who ever made me feel safe for someone who made me feel wanted, until he didn't. If you ever wonder whether you were enough, stop. You were more than enough. I was just less. I read it once. Then I burned it. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. Because that letter wasn't closure. It was a confession. And I had stopped collecting those a long time ago. I didn't need her regret. I had my peace. And I intended to keep it.